Dragon Ball DAIMA is over, and so now it's time to ask the question, was it any good, or was it just a giant pile of crap designed to sell toys? Well, that's what I want to talk about today in my overall series review of Dragon Ball DAIMA. First of all, if you can't handle criticism of DAIMA, leave me a comment, tell me how I'm disrespecting the legacy of Akira Toriyama, because that'll help the video reach more people. So drop that comment down below, maybe leave a like or dislike, hit that subscribe button, and watch till the end so that you can help me out even more. So let's get into it for real this time. So before I tell you what was good and bad and all this stuff, I want to take you on a little journey. I want to tell you where I was when I started watching DAIMA. I made it a point to not watch anything about DAIMA, to not learn anything about DAIMA before it started airing. I just wanted to watch this with a completely blank frame of mind and just enjoy it for what it was. I know there was a lot of criticism when it was announced and people wanted more Super and this and that. I didn't care. Look, I'm not following the Dragon Ball Super manga. When it gets animated, it gets animated. I'll check it out then. I didn't care that Goku and the gang was going to get turned into kids all over again, and this was like GT. I was willing to give it its fair shake. And so when DAIMA started, I didn't really know what to expect beyond just, oh, they're going to the Demon Realm and they're kids now. And I have to say, episode 1 really blew me away. I was so happy after watching episode 1. Yes, I know the criticism that many people have that it's basically just a recap episode. And yes, there's a lot of that episode that is a recap episode, but you have to keep in mind that this show was intended to onboard new people into the Dragon Ball franchise. And part of the new people that they wanted to onboard were little kids. And many little kids haven't watched all of Dragon Ball yet, so I'm totally okay with the recap aspect of this. It was an extra long episode. And on top of that, even old-time fans may not have watched or read the manga in a long time, so they may have forgotten certain aspects of the Buu Saga, which is the main focus of that recap that they show in episode 1. The thing about the recap, though, is I think that it was done in a really nice way. First of all, we got some nice new animation, which is always great. But also, we got to learn about Goma and Degesu and Arinsu. The whole sequence there was done in a pretty fun and comical way. And it was a whole new world, right? This wasn't just let's go see what Goku and the gang is up to. It was just completely new. We didn't get to see what Goku and the gang was up to until much later in the episode. And I actually liked that. I found that to be really refreshing. And then as episode 1 went on, we were introduced to Neba and, of course, the first Tamagami, Tamagami number 1. And then we got to warp to the outer realm. We got to see how that whole warping between the realms works. And I thought this was so creative to have a giant mechanical grumpy goldfish be the way that these characters travel from the demon realm to the outer realm is exactly the kind of thing that you would expect from Toriyama, right? Like, why? I have no idea, but I loved it. I thought it was funny. I thought it was cute. And I really enjoyed that whole sequence. And then, of course, there's the wish, right? This was one of the standout moments in the entire series, I think. The whole comical back and forth between Goma and Shenron. Shenron asking the follow-up questions about, well, how old should I make these people? Like, the age of a first grader is what Goma says, right? And then, of course, he asks about, what about the kids? And then Goma says, make them babies. And then when they ask for, like, what about the other wishes? Because remember, Degetsu wanted another wish and Goma wanted to wish for the third eye. Shenron comes up with the most funny excuse, like to have this almost all-powerful being come up with this answer was just absolutely hilarious and anticlimactic in the best possible way. He says, I only give the 3 wishes to my regular customers. So again, I think that this was one of the standout moments of not just episode 1, but of the entire show. I still smile when I think back to that moment of Shenron saying, no, it's only for the regular customers. And then there's episode 2, which had a couple moments that I have to say I'm still not particularly fond of, but I've gotten used to it. The first isn't even part of the story. The first is the intro song, the opening song, Jan Jaka Jan. And look, it's not a bad song. It's a catchy song. But for me, personally, I think it's my least favorite Dragon Ball opening song. I just don't really like it all that much. Granted, sometimes it does get stuck in my head. And sometimes I do find myself going, Jan Jaka Jan. But compared to even the Dragon Ball Super opening song, right? The Genkai Toppa Savaiba. Like, I love that song. this one just doesn't do it for me. And even though I got used to it and I'm overall okay with it, it just doesn't stand out in the same way the other Dragon Ball opening songs do. The other thing in episode 2 that I didn't particularly like was the changing of the voice actors. I still don't particularly like this. And if you've only watched the dub, and if you're not watching the Japanese, then maybe you're not even aware of this, but the entire main voice cast completely changed after they got turned into kids. The only one that remained the same was Goku. And so Masako Nozawa, at the age of 88, she still performed Goku, and she did an amazing job. Just incredible. Especially towards the end with all the fighting and the screaming. She just didn't miss a beat. It still sounded like Goku. If you go back and watch the original Dragon Ball and all that, there is a slight difference there, but it's nothing like incredibly noticeable. She's just incredible. So I do hope that, much like she says, she's going to live over 100 years and continue working and doing the voice of Goku, because I want more of her. But going back to the other characters, unfortunately, the voice cast completely changed. And logically, yes, it does make sense that the adult versions of these characters would sound different from their 7-year-old selves. But it was still very disorienting to me, and I didn't particularly like it. The Vegeta voice was actually pretty good, and it was pretty close to Ryo Horikawa, the original voice actor of Vegeta. The Piccolo voice, though, I never got used to it. And maybe that's partially because Piccolo just didn't get that many lines, so... But I didn't like it that much. So I was very happy when the voices came back at the end. I think it was in episode 19. So yeah, I'm not completely over that, but in the end, it wasn't such a big deal because almost all of those characters basically disappeared after episode 2. Now, I'm not going to talk about every single episode because, well, if you want that, you can go back and check my playlist of the breakdown and reviews of every single episode of Dragon Ball Daima. No, here I want to talk about some more general things, and I want to start off by talking about the Demon Realm. I loved it. Almost every single episode brought with it new discoveries. It really felt like going on an adventure. And we were learning about the lore and the characters and the food and the tamagami and all this stuff. It was so fun to be in this new fantastical setting. And I think the design of the Demon Realm and the characters was just wonderful. My favorite part may be the second Demon Realm. The way it's this giant ocean with these floating planets and the Kraken. And then, of course, each planet is totally unique. And we only got to see, 2 planets, I think? So I kind of wish we would have seen more. But at the same time, there's a problem with one of those planets, the giant planet. I'm going to talk more about that. But the point is that it was so incredibly imaginative. I really hope that at some point we do go back to the Demon Realm and we learn even more about it and we explore more areas of it. And then there's 2 elements that, are vital to any piece of Dragon Ball media: the humor and the action. Yeah, there were a few jokes here and there that weren't home runs, but for the most part, I really enjoyed the jokes. A few standout ones were the whole Big Boobs Vegeta Hybis sequence, the Minotaur part where Glorio and Goku are fighting, and just basically anything with Hybis, anything with Majin Ku and Majin Du. And maybe my favorite one in the entire show was the Vegeta Bulma bath time joke. I think that may even be one of my favorite jokes in the entire Dragon Ball franchise. I literally laughed out loud, and I don't often do that when I'm watching some piece of media. And then, of course, there's the action and the animation. It was all just amazing. All the Tamagami fights. And then, of course, the whole sequence at the end with King Goma. It was all wonderful. And even just the regular stuff was beautifully animated. Look, we all know that Dragon Ball Super had some low lows when it comes to animation. I don't think Dragon Ball Daima had any of those issues. It was refreshing. It was wonderful. And I am so happy that they devoted that time to the visual aspect of this series. And lastly, for the good stuff, I want to mention the new characters. There were several characters that I really liked. Like, for example, just one really random and very minor one was the girl with the big hat. The girl that gets the third eye for, originally Degesu, but then Goma ends up getting it. I liked her. We didn't get a lot of her, but I thought she was a funny character. Anything with Hybis, like I said before, I really enjoyed Hybis. His unique mix of like goofiness Also, indifference and arrogance, I think really helped him stand out in Dragon Ball, which has a lot of really good and memorable characters. So it's really hard to stand out in Dragon Ball, but I thought Hybis did that really well. They did a great job with Hybis. But no doubt my favorite new character introduced in Daima was Majin Ku. Honorable mention to Majin Doo as well, but Majin Ku really was the standout character of the show in my opinion. And what's so funny about this is the reaction that we got after Majin Ku was revealed, and I think it was maybe episode 9 or something around there. It was really negative. People hated the design, or at least many people that were vocal on social media and YouTube really did not like the design. They were critical. They were saying, how could this be a final boss for Dragon Ball? I can't believe this. This is horrible. And even people in Japan were saying similar things. However, at the time when I watched it, I thought, no. This has got to be some kind of, bait and switch, right? Toriyama loved to fake us out. He loved to subvert expectations. And I was confident that this had to be an example of that. And it actually ended up being, well, not just that, but it was perhaps the biggest subversion of expectations we've ever gotten. Maybe not the biggest, but it was definitely up there, because not only was Majin Ku not the big bad of the show, he ended up being the hero pretty much, right? He's the one that dislodged the third eye from King Goma, and he ended up becoming King Ku. On top of that, just about everything that was set up with Ku paid off in a great way at the end, right? He said, I'm really fast and I'm good at chores, and he wanted a big brother and all that just worked out wonderfully. His skills saved everybody. The only thing that didn't pay off is that comment that he makes when he says, I'm really good at singing. I want a deleted scene in an extended version of Daima where we get to see King Ku belting out some Jan Jeka Jan or something. Maybe some Chala Hechala. Let's have him sing some Chala Hechala. I would love to see that. But I just love how this character that so many people disliked when he was introduced has now become one of the fan favorite characters, not just in Daima, but I think in the entire Dragon Ball franchise. Okay, so I've said a lot of positive things about Dragon Ball Daima, but were there any negatives? Yes, and some of them were quite frustrating, but let's kind of go down them little by little. First of all, I do think that it was a little bit too focused on nostalgia. Sometimes it really felt like some of those callbacks or Easter eggs or whatever you want to call them were a little bit too forced. The most recent one that comes to mind is the whole Super Saiyan bargain sale line that Vegeta has in episode 20 when he's talking to Goku about Super Saiyan 4. That one felt like they were just trying to shoehorn it in because, I don't know, I think something else could have been done there. So, relatively speaking, I guess it's pretty minor, but there were definitely some moments where I went like, okay, that we didn't need to do that. But there's a bigger issue here, and that is the wasted potential of some of the new characters and one of the old characters in particular. So let me start with Degesu. Degesu started off pretty strong. I was interested in his character, but then nothing really was done with him. He even had that really interesting moment where he had to turn off Warp Sama, and it really seemed like he regretted doing it. Like there was something going on there, like he was going to really make an active move against Goma. I don't know. There was something going on in his face and in his general demeanor, but we never got any exposition about that. And in the end, he was just one of the most cliche and forgettable characters in the entire show. And before I talk about the other new character that really disappointed me, I want to talk about the one old character that disappointed me, and that was Piccolo. He had no need to be in the show. He could have been completely absent and nothing would have changed in the story, which is really sad because he's a Namekian and we found out that Namekians come from the demon realm. It seems like he really should have had a moment to shine, but the writers, and I don't know how involved Toriyama was with this aspect of it, but whoever was behind this, they decided that Piccolo wasn't going to get a moment to shine. And it's so sad because there was so much that could have been done with him. He could have been a really important part of the story without having to, I don't know, give him like an entire episode to achieve something. As for the new character, it's Glorio. So generally, I like Gloria. I was really intrigued by Glorio. And of course, his big moment comes at the end when he betrays the woman that he's working for, although Glin's no man woman, I don't know. He betrays Arinsu, okay? So we knew that he was basically working for Arinsu in secret. His job was to get the Dragon Balls and deliver them to her. And then at the end, he betrays her because he had developed feelings and affection for his new comrades, Goku and the gang and Pansy and all them. And that was wonderful. That was done in a nice way. The problem that I have is that he was never developed as a character. We don't know why he ended up working for Arinsu. We don't know why he feels so indebted to her, because he apologizes to her. He uses formal Japanese. There is clearly some kind of relationship there that goes beyond like, I'm gonna pay you $100, so get me the Dragon Balls there. Like, she saved him from something, but we don't know what that was. And if that had been fleshed out in a better way, or well, in any way, because we didn't get any information about that, if that had been done in a good way, I think that could have pushed Dragon Ball Daima to truly next level status. We would have gotten a moment where I would have started crying. That had so much potential, and I think that would have maybe even improved Arinsu's character, because at the end, I think we're left with a kind of strange turn from Arinsu. Yes, it's Shin that says, you should become the king. She doesn't say that for herself, and her logic for refusing the kingship, I guess you would say, it makes sense, right? Maybe somebody else that's stronger than her will come around and take it from her. Although she has Do, and Do can defeat all of the Tamagami, right? So that logic is a little bit shaky, but the point is here that Arinsu needed just a little bit more development, and maybe that turn to the good side would have made even more sense. And perhaps that could have been done by developing her relationship with Glorio. Now, you may be thinking, but that's not what Dragon Ball does. Dragon Ball isn't about those like emotional character moments. And I would say no, I don't agree with you, because Dragon Ball has a lot of those moments. Just off the top of my head, there's the moment with Goku reuniting with Grandpa Gohan. I literally was on the brink of crying in that scene. And then in the Demon King Piccolo saga, we have Krillin dying and Master Roshi sacrificing himself. And there's more. There's so many character moments that are based in who these characters are, what we've seen them do, that then when these things happen, we're left with holes in our chests because we are feeling their pain. And we just didn't get that with Gloria, when I think we could have if time had been allocated in a better way. And that brings me to my point about the pacing. I know early on in Daima, many people were complaining that it was boring, it was worse than GT, the pacing is blah, blah, blah. And I honestly didn't feel that. The bigger problem that I have with the pacing is that time that was allocated to some not important stuff could have been allocated to things like developing Glorio or Arinsu or other stuff in the narrative that I think would have impacted the overall story in a much better way. The two examples that I often bring up are the whole fake Ginyu squad thing. Like, don't get me wrong, that was funny, and the whole convenience store scene was funny, but it didn't have any impact on the narrative. And those characters could have either been used in a better way, or they could have been left out, and that time could have been used for better stuff. There's also that whole episode where the characters end up in the second demon realm on that planet of giants, on the Megasu giants and all that. Yeah, again, that episode in and of itself is not bad. It's just that it didn't have any significant impact on the narrative. At least there were a couple of moments that had something to do with the narrative, I guess, but not really anything significant. So you could have cut pretty much all of that and used that to flesh out, again, Glorio or Arinsu, just to give us more details on the story that we should be focusing on, so that by the time we get to episode 19 and 20 and we're getting these conclusions to these character arcs, we're actually feeling something for these characters. And then there's the whole Super Saiyan 4 thing, which is really frustrating because at the beginning, it seems like it's set up as something that Neva unlocks within Goku. But Goku and Neva don't have any direct connection, right? There's no narrative setup to convince Neva to take a more active role and give him that form or unlock that potential within him, right? There was no narrative significance to that moment. And so that SSJ4 Goku mini moment turns out to look more like a toy commercial than a payoff of something that was set up in the narrative. And then, of course, in episode 20, we get the exchange between Goku and Vegeta, where Goku implies that at the very least, he had some idea that there might be another form beyond Super Saiyan 3. And so he was training in order to achieve it. So what does that mean? Well, we don't exactly know. It seems like Toei is trying to have their cake and eat it too. Like, yeah, they wanted Neva involved, but they also wanted Goku training. Like, it's not 100% clear at this moment. And yes, I'm sure that we'll probably get some kind of explanation at some point later on down the line. But it still is frustrating to not get a clear explanation of something that was such a big moment in this series. If they would have given Daima just a little bit more time in the oven, I think they could have ironed out a lot of this stuff, and Daima would have been truly, truly next level stuff. I think because of these flaws, I just can't rave about it to non-Dragon Ball fans, right? I can't tell a non-anime fan or a non-Dragon Ball anime fan, like, you need to watch this because the story is incredible. The story really isn't all that remarkable. It's more about the journey, the callbacks, the nostalgia, and the wonderful animation, those character moments that are based on characters that we've been following for, some of us, 30, 40 years. I don't know. I haven't been there since the 40 years, but some of us maybe have. So that's why I think it's so wonderful for Dragon Ball fans, right? This was very much made for Dragon Ball fans. There is an aspect of this that is for new people. But I do think that in terms of the story, they did drop the ball a little bit, and they could have really taken this to like Attack on Titan season 1 levels or something like that, where I go like, oh my God, you have to watch this. And that will be like that kind of breakthrough anime that can bring in new people into the Dragon Ball fandom or into anime. You know what I mean, right? Like there are these certain shows like The Mandalorian or Cowboy Bebop that manage to bring in new people outside of the genre, right? Outside of anime, outside of Star Wars. Mandalorian season 1. I don't know about the other ones, but whatever. You know what I mean, right? So I think Daima had that potential, but I think that they dropped the ball a little bit at the end. But all that being said, so what's my overall rating then? Well, as a Dragon Ball fan, I'm going to give this an 8 out of 10, but I'm going to try to divorce myself for a moment from my passion for Dragon Ball and give you a rating as someone who's just a fan of anime and good storytelling. In that case, I would give Dragon Ball Daima a 7 out of 10. Yeah, it's fun, but it's not going to be for everybody. And the storytelling just needed a little bit more work. So if you want to give an average of both my ratings, I guess I give this a 7.5 out of 10. But what do you think? Do you agree? Do you think it was better? Do you think it was worse? Do you think it was horrible? Did my opinion resonate with you? Let me know in the comments. And I think something that we can all agree on is that we wouldn't be here without Akira Toriyama. If he hadn't created Dragon Ball, I might not be doing this YouTube channel, and our lives would be, in some way, quite different. I wouldn't have these figures behind me, right? So I just want to say, again, thank you to Akira Toriyama. The incredible work that he's done has brought us so much joy. And yeah, 8, 7, whatever. The point is that I love Dragon Ball, and I'm very glad that we got Daima. Even if it's not perfect, whatever, it was still extremely enjoyable. And hey, if you haven't already, go give it a shot. I'll see you in the next one.